This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Is locked and loaded. How you doing, my man? You doing good?
I'm doing great. Can't wait for the Super Bowl. We got the two number one seeds. We got the MVP. We got all sorts of star power. We got a lot of fun props to unpack. I think we're going to see a high scoring game. So let's get to it, man.
Yeah, man. We got a lot of things to talk about, obviously, going on. First of all, want to get your thoughts on this Super Bowl. Let's get into a little Super Bowl talk. What do you think about this matchup right now? The Eagles are favored by a point and a half, depending on where you see it right now. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, where you come down in this game, ultimately, are you more into the Eagles having the better roster or the Chiefs having more Super Bowl experience and having the best player in the league in Mahomes? And Andy Reid, who's already in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned, no matter what happens the rest of his career. The Eagles have a good coaching staff, of course, but Andy Reid famously so good off a bye week, right? They just had 2 weeks to prepare. That's advantage Kansas City. They've been to the Super Bowl before. It's such a different – obviously the Eagles, they waltzed through the NFC playoffs. They didn't really have to do anything that difficult because the Giants weren't that good. The Niners lost their quarterback right away. But the Super Bowl is such a different game because there's all the hype and there's all the waiting and the halftime is interminably long and everything. A lot of times I'm not surprised when you see Super Bowls get off to slow starts because I think the players a lot of times are a little bit tight and maybe even the play callers are a little bit conservative early on. So a lot of times you see games like Carolina and New England, a couple decades ago, it's like nothing's happening and then the second half everything explodes. I lean Kansas City, but Philadelphia's roster is great. More of my action is on the props. There's a lot of player props I like. And again, I think there's going to be a lot of scoring. And I think some of the offensive matchups really tie in well to what the defenses are going to allow them to do. So I'm going to have more prop action than I do on the game. But my official pick is Kansas City.
All right. So, I'm actually going to pick Kansas City myself. I know everybody looks at the Eagles. I think the secondary for Kansas City is being overlooked. I think they're better than what people think they are. I think Mahomes is going to play one hell of a game. And I really think that, Hurts he wasn't necessarily sharp in that NFC Championship game. I think if KC can be disruptive and they have a guy that, as good as the Eagles line is, Chris Jones or Aaron Donald, or, there's certain guys, Boza, there's certain guys that are just going to wreak havoc on you, whether you like it or not. And I don't care how good your line is. I think Chris Jones is that guy. And I think Chris Jones can actually create some havoc where he's going to force Hurts to have to get rid of the ball a little faster and crumble that pocket and put some pressure. And that's where I want to see if I'm counting on Mahomes being the more accurate passer out of the two. That's why I'm leaning to the better quarterback. And then I'm leaning on the tangible part of Chris Jones being the ultimate difference maker on that D-line, assisting that secondary.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of things that I would just nod and agree to. Disruptive, right? That's the right word for Chris Jones. He got some down ballot votes for Defensive Player of the Year. That's how good he was. And we saw him break up the Bengals. The Jones getting his second sack on that final Cincinnati offensive play was probably the biggest play. I think Jones is the second most important player for Kansas City in this game. Obviously, the quarterback is the first player you're going to mention, especially when he is Patrick Mahomes. He throws the ball as much as he does. But if the Eagles lose in this game, if Kansas City wins, Chris Jones probably had a big. In fact, I think Jones even. We know how MVP works for the Super Bowl, that the quarterbacks often earn the MVP, and even when they don't, if there's not an obvious pick, they usually give it to the quarterback. I still think Justin Tuck was robbed. I think Ty Law was robbed in the Super Bowl that Tom Brady got an MVP. But I would not be shocked if Chris Jones somehow, if he gets a strip sack, right? If he gets like 2 sacks and forces like a fumble of Hurts or something like that, because the Eagles' offense is so good. It's not realistic to say to Kansas City, okay, let's hold them to 320 yards. Let's hold them to 14 points. That's not going to happen. The Eagles are going to move the ball. So the idea is, can you disrupt them? Can you make them punt a couple times? Can you get a couple of turnovers? Can you rattle the cage of Hurts, who I mean, let's look at the schedule, man. I mean, look at the teams they beat. I mean, I know the NFC wasn't that great this year. The division wasn't that great. You can only play who's put in front of you, and the Chiefs didn't have the hardest schedule in the world either. But the Eagles had a cakewalk of a schedule, and then they played 2 playoff games. Hurts comes off an injury. We don't really know how healthy he is. He wasn't needed to do heavy lifting. He's thrown so few passes in the fourth quarter because games have gotten away from other teams, and the Eagles have just run the ball and salted away the clock. So has he really been? Is he up to this test? Can he throw haymakers back and forth with Patrick Mahomes? And again, all you're asking the Chiefs defense to do, we're not saying stop them, we're not saying shut them out, we're not saying win the game on defense. I'm just saying just get in their way, just disrupt them, just make 3 or 4 plays that can tilt the game a little bit. I think Chris Jones is that guy who can do it, and that's probably the second strongest reason I have for being on Kansas City.
All right. And listen, next week, folks, we're going to pick up more of the draft talk and things like that. But just out of curiosity, did you watch anything in the Senior Bowl this week? I know you had a rough week, so just in case.
I haven't done any prep about the upcoming draft yet. That will start for me Monday.
Yeah, exactly. I figured that. And then the other thing is Vic Fangio. What'd you think of that hiring for the Miami Dolphins?
I love going backwards on the coaching, the reverse Peter principle. Whenever you can get a former coach who didn't work out as a head coach and get him as a coordinator, I think it's a great move. Fangio's still a great defensive mind in my opinion.
I think that this is and now you got the balance that you need. Mm-hmm. Because on defense, obviously you had some issues, you had a lot of injuries. But now you've got like a head coach running your defense. And I think for McDaniel, that's going to be a really comforting thing that he doesn't have to necessarily worry about the defense and he can leave it to a seasoned pro.
I'll tell you what, there are 28 teams in the NFL that don't want to play the AFC East next year because Buffalo's set up to be good. Look at the Jets' infrastructure, right? They just had the offensive and defensive rookie of the year. And you could argue that Breece Hall was as talented as those other 2 guys, right? Quinton Williams got a down ballot pick for Defensive Player of the Year. If they can get a quarterback, the Jets are really dangerous. In Miami, even with all the stops and starts with Tua, they made the playoffs and they gave Buffalo a scare. Tyreek Hill was in the running for Offensive Player of the Year. Obviously, Jalen Waddle is still on the up escalator. And New England, who probably has the weakest roster on paper, how bad can a Bill Belichick team ever be? This looks like the best division in football to me.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt that division is going to be an absolute bitch. And you would expect the Jets. Oh, so let me play the shell game with you, the quarterback shell game. Okay. Been having some fun with this. Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo. No fence straddling. Tie them to one team each.
Pack to the future. Right? Rodgers is going to the Jets. Carr is going to the Saints. And let's say Garoppolo goes to the Raiders. I
got the reverse. I got Rodgers going to Vegas, okay. And I got Garoppolo going to the Jets. That's what I got.
Carr in New Orleans.
Yeah, Carr definitely. I agree with you in New Orleans, but I think Rodgers does not want to deal with the New York market. Once he gets out of that black room for 4 days,
he's got Devontae Adams.
I don't need to deal with the New York Post bringing up my relationships and this, that, and I don't get along with my parents. And in Vegas, he'll go play with Devontae Adams. He's a West Coast guy, so he's closer to the West Coast now. All that kind of stuff. I just think that. Yeah, I may be wrong. You might be right that he might end up going to New York. I think that's with you and me. Here's where we're going to be either right or wrong. I think we're both going to be right on Carr going to New Orleans because that looks like a perfect fit for him, overall. But I think the New York thing is going to be something that Aaron Rodgers is not going to be very comfortable with.
The thing is, I think the Jets are better set up to maybe be a winning team next year. Where I don't like the Vegas roster very much.
I'm with you. There's no doubt about that. I don't know if he thinks that. You know what I mean? I'm not sure.
I mean, you go to the AFC West, and I talked about how the AFC East is going to be a meat grinder, and it is.
Oh God,
the AFC West, you got Mahomes, you got Justin Herbert, and God help us if Sean Payton can fix Russell Wilson. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. But I mean, he'll have a better chance of doing it than Hackett had.
Yeah,
that division's set up to be a monster too. It's going to be really hard to win there.
Yeah, no, it'll be a bitch of a division either way. He's not winning in the West. I'm sorry, not with that
The
team.
Raiders
But
are going 7-10. I don't think when people thought Brady was going to go to the Raiders, like, well, why to go 6-11? I always thought, and I'm disappointed. You talk about quarterback fits. I thought Brady fit San Francisco perfectly. I'm disappointed that's not
yeah,
going to happen.
I agree. I agree. He would have been perfect there. He doesn't have to do a lot. He just
From
has to
that area.
complete a couple passes. They've got the running game. They've got the defense. Yeah, they're dominant everywhere. They would have been a Super Bowl caliber team, and he would have had a chance to win easily. They're a championship with that kind of
And
team.
he's from
I'm
that
with you
area,
there.
right? He grew up, he was in the stadium
Yes,
when Montana threw the pass to Clark. You know, I was a
exactly.
49er fan way back. Get one more victory lap, go deep in the playoffs with San Francisco. I don't know if I get a figure back channels. They must have kicked the tires, and maybe San Francisco's like, well, we think we can get Purdy back, or we have to see what we have with Trey Lance. I don't know what their angle is. They've made it clear they're not going to bring Garoppolo back. And Garoppolo, by the way, he's the underrated guy in all this, right? Because Rodgers, he's won MVPs and everything, and he's such a diva, such an attention guy. And I think Garoppolo gets overlooked. I even think
It's only the injuries, dude. That's all it is
Yeah.
that he breaks down all the time. And that's kind of been his entire, I mean, from the first time that he got on the field, that for Deflategate, he couldn't even last the 4 games they needed him.
Right.
They had
Brissett
to
had to
use
play, yeah.
Brissett. You know what I mean? He's never had any luck whatsoever staying healthy. I think everybody looks at Jimmy and says, the dude can play. It's not that he can't play. It's just he's never available for you. And and that I think is what hurts him ultimately when it's
Valid
all said
point.
and done. Yeah. Because he's not really a bad. Yeah. And by the way, New York, they just had one MILF monster. Now they're going to have a babe magnet now in Jimmy Garoppolo. So, he kind of gets to pick up where Broadway Joe left off.
Every quarterback's a babe Baghdad. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has been linked to Mallory Edens, who's the daughter of one of the
But there's
Milwaukee
nothing like
Bucks owners.
Garoppolo.
Yeah,
There's nothing like Garoppolo is looked at like he's a GQ model playing. By the way, have you ever seen that video where he's at the Warriors game with Kittle and McCaffrey and 2 other guys? Did you ever see that video?
Yeah, and they act like they're not even there.
Right.
Garoppolo's the only
All the
person
cheerleaders come by to
see.
say hi to Jimmy, and they don't even act like. And you know that those guys would have gotten all kinds of attention in a club somewhere. But you're there, and Jimmy Garoppolo just outshines everybody.
Yeah, this quarterback, what they call quarterback face, right? I mean, he's
Right,
literally
he's
the
got
face of your organization, right?
Yeah. He's got that face. All right, let's get to some props in this game. Let's start with Patrick Mahomes. Half an interception, higher or lower. Rushing yards, 18.5, higher or lower. 294 passing yards, higher or lower. 2.5 total TDs, higher or lower.
I'll tell you the ones that I would punch. He's going to throw a pick in this game because Philadelphia's got the best pass rush in the league, and it comes from 5 different guys. They had 4 different guys with double-digit sacks, and then Fletcher Cox, I think, had 7. So they rush you on the flanks. They rush you up the middle. They can rush you without exotic things, and that's such a valuable weapon. I don't think Mahomes is going to run much in this game either. And I know it's a low total. Usually I like betting running props for quarterbacks in the playoffs because, like, what are you saving yourself for? You might as well just, let it all hang out, YOLO, go for it. And he did have that big run at the end of the Bengals game. But I would lean under on his rushing props. Plus, if you think Kansas City's going to win the game, you're going to get the kneel downs too. I feel confident he'll throw a pick in this game. I feel confident he will not run that much in this game. The other 2 props I'm going to skip, but there's plenty of Kansas City stuff I like. In fact, I'll just pivot to the next thing.
How about the 2.5 touchdowns? Total, not thrown, but total.
You got to figure he goes over that. This is going to be a high-scoring game, and Kansas City doesn't, they don't. Pacheco's been okay, but when they get in close, they score on touchdown passes. It's Mahomes who is the guy who gets the touchdowns.
And how about the passing? 294.5.
It's such a big number. I think I have to bet over if you force me to play it, but I'm not going to play it.
All right, Pacheco, 49.5 yards rushing, 15.5 yards receiving. Jerick McKinnon, 22.5 yards receiving, 3 receptions, and I'm going to go 5.5 rushing attempts. What do you think? Any of those?
Excuse me, a little bit of a cold here. These are 2. This is where I really feel confident. It's a shame we didn't talk early in the week as the number keeps going up. But McKinnon's receiving yards and Pacheco's. Now, McKinnon had a huge December. In the playoffs, it's been a little bit more Pacheco. He's getting more in the circle of trust, and Mahomes has been checking down rather than running because he's a little bit hobbled. But what do you do against a team that has a great pass rush? How do you slow it down? Screen game. Get the ball out of your quarterback's hands. I think both these running backs are going to easily beat their receiving props.
Okay. All right. Travis Kelce, half a touchdown, 7.5 receptions, and 79.5 yards receiving.
Those are all such huge numbers, but
I love receiving touchdown. Half
Philly,
a receiving
me
touchdown?
too. I'm punching receiving touchdown. I already have that. The thing with Philly is they play so much zone. And what does that mean? Define throws in the middle of the field. That's Travis Kelce. And they're going to, even though the Chiefs don't have great wide receivers, Philadelphia is going to concede. If they have to give up Travis Kelce 7 yards, 9 yards, 11 yards, that's better than Valdez-Scantling catching a 40-yard pass, or McCole Hardman getting behind somebody, or Sky Moore, God forbid, Kadarius Toney gets on the field. So teams, as great as Kelce is, teams want you to have a 15-play drive. They don't want you to have a 5-play drive. I think Kelsey's going to have 11 catches in this game.
All right. Receivers, as you talked about right now, Juju Smith-Schuster, 3.5 receptions and 37.5 receiving yards. Kadarius Toney, 3 receptions, 27.5 receiving yards. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 37.5 yards receiving and 2.5 receptions. Any of those interesting to you?
Yeah, Juju, because again, the middle of the field is going to be open, and you're talking about a team that plays zone, that plays into Juju's skill set. The problem with everybody else in this receiving tree is you just never know who's in the circle of trust, who's going to dress, who's going to be on the field. And God forbid, like Hardman runs the wrong route, or Sky Moore drops a pass, or MVS does something wrong. I mean, they can easily get mothballed and get ignored for the rest of the game. I don't feel comfortable playing any of their receivers and any of their props other than Juju. I think Juju's an easy over in this. He's going to have like
not even Sky Moore, 7.5 yards receiving, over and under.
I love props you can win on one play. Even one play that doesn't
that's
go
what
anywhere.
I was thinking about the Sky Moore one. Like they throw to him every once in a while, and he'll easily get 7.5 yards, dude.
I might bet 2 of them in tandem and think, well, I'm going to hit one of them, and maybe if I get lucky, I get 2 of them. But let me give you the thrust here. The ones I really like: Mahomes will throw a pick. The receivers are going to be involved in the passing game, and bet anything you want on Travis Kelce, because there's no way. The problem with Kelce is you can't cover him because he's bigger than everybody else. Even if you have somebody standing right next to him, he's got the catch radius, so he's always open, even when he doesn't look open.
They can't win without him being a big part of it anyway.
No, they really can't.
He's just a stud. All right, Jalen Hurts. There's a lot of these that are pretty interesting. 1.5 passing TDs, half a rushing TD. We're going to go with 49.5 yards rushing, 239.5 yards passing, and half an interception.
He'll throw the pick. This may sound counterintuitive. He's going to have a rushing touchdown, but he's not going to beat his rushing prop. Keep in mind what Hurts is. He's a resourceful runner, and they call design runs for him, but he's not the Lamar Jackson, Steve Young, Michael Vick breakaway runner. You watch like a Justin Fields highlight, and you always know at any point, even if Justin Fields is in trouble, he might make it into a 60-yard run. That's not Hurts' game. He is a good runner, but he's more of a physical runner. He's more of a schemed up runner. They love him at the goal line. He's going to have a rushing touchdown in this game, but I think he'll only have about 30 rushing yards. He'll throw the pick too.
All right, let's go to the running backs because there's some interesting stuff here. Okay, Miles Sanders obviously is their number one guy, but all right, so first, 4.5 yards receiving for Miles Sanders, 60.5 yards rushing for Miles Sanders, half a rushing plus receiving TD. So either one gets you over that half. And then the other one is Kenneth Gainwell, 11.5 yards receiving, 4.5 rushing attempts, and 19.5 rushing yards. Yeah, Your thoughts on this?
Those last two, we've been talking about Gainwell Sumner in the playoffs. Those last 2 numbers speak to me because I think Gainwell's carved out a role here. And remember, not that they're necessarily looking towards next year, but Sanders is a free agent. I think Gainwell, and I know Gainwell's only about 200 pounds or so, and this is always going to be a committee-driven team, plus a quarterback who runs, so that's part of the committee too. But Gainwell's probably going to be their starter next year. I think the Eagles, the way they're structured, they like Sanders, but they're not going to prioritize him. If anybody else wants to give him a good contract, they'll be like, okay, we had a nice run, thanks a lot. And isn't it interesting that Sanders was a really good receiver when he came out of college. He had a big receiving year his first year. This year, he didn't even get to 100 receiving yards. They just shut him out. And part of that is Hurts doesn't want. When you have a running quarterback, they don't check down; they run. So a lot of times that hurts the running backs in the receiving game. But it sounds crazy. I actually would go under on Sanders for the receiving. I don't think they're going to prioritize him at all in that way. And I love the Gainwell props. Gainwell, I think Gainwell's going to have like 7 carries for like 35 yards in this game.
Right, exactly. To me, the 19 and a half, I don't know, man. Maybe they know something.
You can win on one play. He gets the second level, you just won.
He's done. Right, you got it. I'm with you. All right, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Let's go with 5 receptions for A.J. Brown, 72 and a half yards receiving. Devonta Smith, 5 receptions, 64 and a half yards receiving.
If I were going to play Smith, I would only play the receiving yards. I wouldn't play the catches. But I'll tell you what I've already bet on. I've already taken A.J. Brown over his yardage. I got it maybe a yard lower, but low 70s, he'll beat that. And A.J. Brown's longest reception, I think, is in the neighborhood of 26.5. Kansas City, I agree with you, Kansas City secondary. When you have young players, what's underrated is that by the end of the season, they're basically like another year of experience. So I don't think the Kansas City secondary is as bad as people want to make it out to be. But let's look at the stats, right? They're 29th against number 1 receivers, and that's what A.J. Brown is. He's a guy who wins on every type of route, everywhere on the field. He's going to end this game with like 95, 100 yards, and he's going to have at least one long splash play. I like to go 26 and a half over, and I like him, whatever the yardage prop is. And remember, we always talk about this with props. If you're going over, bet early. If you're going under, bet late. So if you're thinking of going over on some of these props, I would get them in as soon as you can because people like to bet overs anyway, and these numbers are going to keep rising. I'm going over on A.J. Brown.
Dallas Goedert, last one here. Tight end, 5 receptions, 48 and a half yards receiving.
Lean over on the yardage. Again, the catches, I'm not sure what to do with that because the Chiefs will throw 45 passes. If the Eagles can get away with 27, 28 passes, they'll do that. I would lean over on the Goedert yardage, but I don't love his props.
Okay. All right. There you go. What do you got going on in Yahoo so folks can check you out, my friend, this weekend?
Yep. A lot of baseball content up. We gave out our players we're most excited to draft, and do know that Yahoo Fantasy Baseball is open for business. And when you need to debrief from the Super Bowl, the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast will be coming at you Monday. I'll be taping with Matt Harmon, giving you a look at what just happened and a look ahead. And, of course, we're going to have all sorts of content covering the draft, covering the NFL draft, free agency, all that type of stuff, because the NFL has a 12-month calendar, as we all know. Remember last year, right? It was just crazy with receivers. Last year was the receiver changing teams. A.J. Brown changed. Devontae Adams changed. You guys got Tyreek Hill. This year it's going to be all about the quarterbacks, which you and I teased a little while ago. So the NFL is going to have a crazy offseason, and we're going to be here for you covering it and excited about it at Yahoo Sports.
What'd you think of Zach Thomas?
I deserve it. He deserved it so badly. And, man, it makes me so frustrated. I'm glad but frustrated at the same time that Don Coryell goes in long after he's passed because I
hate
that guy.
that. Yeah.
That guy obviously, Steve Sable went in after he died, which will always frustrate me. He gets people in the Hall of Fame. Ken Stabler went in after he died. Clifford Branch. Let's be. I think everybody's heard this, but let's tell people what we think about them when they're here. Let's not wait.
Hey, when Andy Reid retires, why does he have to wait 5 years, bro? Yeah. Why?
Right.
We know what it is now, and 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. Get his ass in once he retires.
And occasionally occasionally leagues do that, right? Didn't the NHL put Gretzky in right away when he retired or something like that?
I'm not sure. I forgot about that. Did they?
I think they did.
I have no problem with that.
Me neither. Who would vote against Wayne Gretzky?
Yes. I mean, give me a break. Although it'll be a baseball writer. Because there's always some idiot, a baseball writer. It's like 99%. It's like, dude, it's Derek Jeter. It's Hank Aaron. It's
Willie Mays. It's Mickey Mantle, right? Yeah, didn't see enough.
where are you? What's wrong with you? How can you be the one guy? It's baseball always has that idiot that does that every single time.
You're all right on that.
Follow him on Twitter at Scott_Pianowski and catch his exceptional work there at Yahoo. Glad to have you back, my friend. I hope all is well.
Thanks, buddy. Great to talk to you, Big O. Enjoy the game.
Thank you, my friend. There you go. Scott Pianowski getting it done. Sports Grill, baby. 8 great locations. I've been saying for years 7 great locations. Now I get to say 8 great locations. which is just absolutely awesome, folks. So go check it out. You got the Super Bowl this weekend. The Doral location is open and ready to go. They got all kinds of specials for you, all kinds of food and drink specials going on, and they've always got specials going on for NFL games. So enjoy it out there. The special grilled wings. Remember their sauces. Now you can take them home with you. Sports Grill, baby. Great place to go with friends and family members, and great food and great sports.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.